Okay, so now we're going to actually take a look at our two 3D shapes, which is the cube, which you just learned a song about called Cubie the Cube, and we're going to talk about another one called a rectangular prism. When you take a look at them right now, you should already be able to see that they're pretty similar shapes, pretty similar 3D shapes. So let's take a look at the cube first. So here's the cube. And like we saw in that video about the ice cube, there are 6 faces. Now, if you remember, the faces are the flat sides all around it. And the faces of the cube, you can see they are squares. Every single face is a square. That is why this is a special 3D shape called a cube, because it takes 6 squares to create all of the faces. So I've already numbered them, so let's go ahead and show you this. This is side or face number 1. This is face number 2. This is face number 3. Face number 4, and we're back to there. This is face number 5, and all the way on this side is face number 6. So just like the number cube, when you're rolling a cube in a game, this cube has 6 faces, and those faces are squares. I'm going to write that on here. Okay. In Cubie the Cube, they talked also about how the points. Now we're going to use a different name. These corners right here, we're going to call these, instead of points, we're going to use this math term. They are called vertices. Vertices are these little points in the corners. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4 here. And then if I flip it all the way over, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 on this side also. And 4 and 4 is 8. So a cube has 8 vertices. And then in the video, it also talked about these parts right here, where one face comes to touch another face. Do you remember what those are called? Yes, those were called edges. And if I were to count all of the edges around, do you remember how many the cube had from the video with Cubie the Cube? That's right. There are 12. 12 edges on a cube. And I'm going to write down here, it is 3D shape. So these are all the attributes of our cube. 6 faces, but all the faces are squares. 8 vertices, which are those corner points. 12 edges, which are where 2 faces connect. And then it is a 3D shape. So let's go ahead and look at our rectangular prism. A rectangular prism looks pretty similar to a cube, but it's kind of like if I took a cube, so here's a cube, stretched it out just a little bit further. So let's go ahead and start with the faces again, and let's go ahead and count the faces. That's face number 1, face number 2, number 3, number 4, up here is number 5, and flip it for number 6. So you notice it has the same number of faces as my cube. The only difference here is that look at my faces. Are all these faces here squares? No, they're not. They are rectangles. What about that one? That's a square. What about that one? That's a square. They're not always going to be squares. Sometimes these 2 sides might be rectangles as well. Think about like a box of cereal. So these sides, this is why it's called a rectangular prism. You hear the word rectangle in the word rectangular prism. So when we say the 6 faces, we say they are rectangles. A lot of times it's going to be 4 rectangles and 2 squares, but that's not always the case. Sometimes it's going to be 6 rectangles. So it could be 6 rectangles or 4 rectangles and 2 squares. But again, the difference is not all the faces are squares. What about the vertices? Same, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we have 8 vertices, which are the points. And then these edges right here, if I were to count all of them up, it would be the same as our cube, 12 edges. And it is also 3D shape. So when we look at my 2 3D shapes here, the cube and the rectangular prism, They both have 6 faces. It's the faces that are a little bit different. They both have 8 vertices. They both have 12 edges, and they are both 3D shapes. So all in all, these two 3D shapes are pretty similar.